You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Hello, and welcome back to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my guest this week, Kellie Williams. Kellie is a mum of two with over 20 years experience in business, and as a coach and mentor, her mission is to help others create the lifestyle they want for themselves and their families. And I'm really glad it's sort of coaching and mentoring, because I think mentoring's kind of a little bit more about do this, whereas coaching is a little bit more about what do you want to do. But anyway, we can talk about that later. Kellie believes business doesn't have to be hard. It can be fun, which I'm really pleased to hear. And she really supports her clients by starting with their lifestyle and business goals and kind of working backwards from there to create a business designed basically around their dreams, around their lifestyles, which is what we all want. And we were talking a little bit earlier, and I was saying about how, let's get rid of this whole work-life balance and let's just have balance. So she started her company at the drop of a hat in 2019, and Kellie's going to tell us a little bit more about herself and that right now. So Kellie, introduce yourself and tell us about At the Drop of a Hat.
Hi Sarah, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's really lovely to be here. It's been a couple of months since I've done a podcast and I love doing these, so I'm really pleased to be here with you today. So thank you. So At the Drop of a Hat came about in 2019 because I was, busy as a mum. I was working in a full-time role. I was running a recruitment branch for a big care recruitment company. And it just became so difficult to juggle everything with the kids. And I also had a situation where my dad had been diagnosed with dementia. And that was also becoming more pressing in that I was helping a lot with his care. So my mum was the main carer at that point in time, but I was always helping. And because my mum didn't drive, I was always there as the one who needed to drive to appointments, or if there was an emergency, I needed to be on hand. And at the time, my brother was living in London. So it was a bit more tricky because we're based in Harden in North Wales, and my mum and dad lived in Chester at that point in time. So things became a bit more tricky with work. And I'd always wanted to work for myself. I've always had a bit of an entrepreneurial streak in me. And I enjoy helping people. So I had this idea about my business At the Drop of a Hat, to be able to help business people run their businesses. And the more research I did on that, the more I found, well, this is actually already a thing. It's virtual assistants. That's what it is. So I set up my business and things started to go really well very quickly. And the business just scaled and scaled. So quite quickly, I wasn't a virtual assistant on my own for an awful lot of time. I started to build a consultancy with a team. And because I've got an awful lot of years behind me in terms of staff development, recruitment, business experience, and sales and marketing, all that lot helped me with really scaling the business. So I started to mentor and coach people within lots of different businesses, but very specifically virtual assistant businesses as well. And then in 2021, I launched my first course and I launched a membership for virtual assistants as well. And by the time I got to July of 2021, I'd broken through the VAT threshold and went limited company and VAT registered. So it was all a massive learning curve for me. And it was just really exciting because not only was I building something for myself, I was also helping a lot of people along the way. And the business has just gone from strength to strength from there.
And it's, for anyone out there who's not sure what a virtual assistant is, I mean, I think probably most people are, but just to explain, I mean, it's somebody, in the old days, you would have been a personal assistant or a secretary or an admin. So there's various roles, but basically it's somebody who supports people. And the virtual bit is you do it virtually, you do it remotely now. You don't have to be sat in the outer office gatekeeping your boss, which quite often happens. Been there, done that. But, it is basically about supporting people and making sure that people have the necessary support, that they have assistants who are trained in what they want them to use and things like that, because there's so much technology, there are so many different platforms out there that it's not like one shop does all, is it? People specialize in different things. So that must have been very, very useful to you when all of a sudden, having done all of this, having scaled your business, having been so successful, you suddenly had a couple of health challenges, didn't you?
Yes. Do you know what? I don't know why it is that I sort of have this nervous laugh every time I talk about these challenges. I'm not sure why that is. I need to figure that out really, maybe in some of my therapy sessions, don't I?
Yeah. It might be that you're nervous that people are going to be kind of, the head tilt sympathy rather than just tell me more type thing, or just taking an
Yes.
interest. Who knows? But yeah.
I don't know. There's something about me where I want people to think that I've got it all together and I'm really professional and that everything's okay. And that's very much me from my theatre background, coming on screen, telling people, that this is the story. But actually, I am quite open about sometimes it's not okay. And when um, when all this happened was at the beginning of 2023. So it actually getting quite personal here. I've been going through some difficulties with my periods being extremely heavy and very, very painful. And it turned out I was suffering from very bad fibroids. So I started to have some injections to reduce those fibroids so I could actually have a hysterectomy. Um, and it was when I went to my pre-op appointment in January 2023, they did their normal observations on me, and my blood pressure was really high. And that was the first time in my life that somebody had said that to me, because my background is dancing. So I was a professional dancer, I've always danced. And obviously, having the kids, I was never as fit as I used to be, but I always had low blood pressure before this happened. So I was told to go to the doctors, get my blood pressure taken. And they told me that I had got high blood pressure, sent me to the hospital. They did an ECG. Then they said that I'd had a heart attack. I was
Wow.
46 at the time when all of this was happening. So they told me that I'd had a heart attack. Then I had some further tests, and it turned out I hadn't had a heart attack. I've got a heart condition called Wolff Parkinson White.
Right. Yes.
So have you heard of it?
I have heard of it. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it was a new one for me because I've worked with a lot of people with health conditions and disabilities before, but I'd never heard of it. So, for those people who are listening that have never heard of this, I have a special heart with an extra electrical pathway, which sometimes makes it get confused, basically. So, as you can imagine, I had a few months where I was sort of getting over this, came to the realization that the best thing for me was to get as fit and as healthy as possible. So I worked with a personal trainer who was very helpful with me, and we didn't do anything complicated. I started to walk 10,000 steps a day, and I made sure I was doing that. I was making sure I was drinking the right amount of water every day and consuming the right foods, high protein and everything. And I even started running.
Really.
Yes. And I really enjoyed it. And it became my lifestyle. So every day I was making sure I would do my 10,000 steps a day, and I'd have some rest days from running or the exercise that I was doing. And I started to feel much, much fitter. Um, and then people started to notice on my Zoom calls and on my masterclasses in my membership and what I do, that my head had started to shake. So I'd obviously got another health challenge coming. So I'd started with a tremor, basically.
And you didn't notice the tremor yourself. It was other people saying.
it was when other people started to say it to me that I started to notice it every time I went to record a video, every time I did a live or did a masterclass. And when I was tired or when I was stressed, it would be much worse.
So having built your fitness up and, like you say, getting your 10,000 steps in, and of course the good thing about running is it means you get them in quicker as well, which is always good. But so having really sort of turned your lifestyle around and prioritizing your health and getting to a point where you felt fit and healthy, suddenly this tremor happens, and so then what happened?
So we're very fortunate that we've got private health. So I booked an appointment with a neurologist, and within the first few minutes, he diagnosed me with dystonic tremor, generalized dystonic tremor. So not just my head, my whole body. I just thought that my legs occasionally wobbled when I was tired, but that's all part of it. And I actually have this little twitch in my eyebrows as well. So I now have Botox in my neck and I have Botox in my forehead to prevent the tremor from being so noticeable.
Right.
So
Well,
he,
I was going to say there are medical uses of Botox.
yes,
In many, I mean, there are many medical uses. It has some amazing things, but I imagine that for you that was a reassurance because it then becomes something that's controlled rather than obvious on a call.
yeah.
Or
And I think Botox, I find it fascinating for the medical use side of things. I've actually got one of my biggest clients is a, what is he? An aesthetics practitioner, but he does training. So he works with people all over the world. And what they look at is they look at, not just the aesthetics, but they look at the longevity side and the medical side of things. And it's a fascinating business to work with, actually. Um, so at that point in time, in that consultation, in the first 5 minutes, he diagnosed that. And then obviously he said, we'll book an MRI just to make sure there's nothing else happening in the brain.
gosh,
And that was when, a few days later, once he'd got the results, he phoned me. And he said, there's something there.
oh gosh, that must have been such a shock.
Yes, it was, because you don't expect that. And also because he'd said that the dystonic tremor was something that wouldn't necessarily be related to something else.
Gosh.
So he booked me a second scan so they could do a more detailed scan on what they'd found. And then in my next appointment with him, he showed me that I'd got a brain tumour.
Gosh, that must have been so, I mean, A, to be told that there's something there, but then to find out it's a tumour must have been such a shock, particularly as you'd been doing everything right, lifestyle-wise. You'd been doing everything you could to promote health. It must
Yeah,
have been the last thing you were expecting. So just, I
yeah.
mean, was it benign?
Yes, it was. And there's actually, this is something that I get on my soapbox a little bit about now, because that's what everybody asks. And
Yeah.
now I'm actually friends with a number of women who have been through a similar thing. And two of the ladies who I'm friends with had pretty much the same tumour. It's called a meningioma. One of my friends, hers was in a very similar place to mine. And one of my other friends who had a meningioma was in a slightly different place. Um, but but there's a common thread that everybody asks you, is it benign or malignant? And yes, it was great to find out that it was benign, but it's still an invader in your brain.
But also, and this is, I think, something that people often don't realise is the difference between sort of benign and malignant. Malignant, obviously, we're talking about cancer there. I mean, the cancer has more maybe sort of ongoing issues, but
Yeah.
the benign tumours can be just as devastating. They can have
Mm-hmm.
just as significant an impact on people. It doesn't mean they're less
Yeah.
serious. It just means
Yeah.
it's a different serious. And I
Mm.
think that's a really important one, particularly as you're talking about meningiomas. It's kind of in the meninges,
Yeah.
the kind of layers of tissue between the skull and the brain, if you like.
Yes.
if people have meningitis, it's an inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
So meningioma is a tumour within there.
Yeah.
But like I say, benign tumours aren't less serious; they're different serious. And in some cases, because they can grow as well, they can cause just as many devastating
Yes.
effects. So
Yeah.
it's not a question of being benign. Oh, that's okay then. It's not necessarily, is it?
Yeah. And I think I was extremely lucky. I've been extremely lucky because the tremor meant that they found it whilst it was quite small. So the position of mine was near to the pituitary gland, but attached to the optic nerve.
Oh, right.
And I was extremely lucky because so I'm trying not to get upset now because it is emotional.
Yeah, it must
But
be.
I was extremely lucky that they found it so early because if they hadn't, I would have lost my sight.
Right. Gosh. So in some ways, I suppose Zoom calls almost saved your sight because people noticed, which got
Yes.
you to go and get it checked out.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yes.
Wow. So what treatment did you have?
So the usual treatment for meningiomas most of the time is that they'll decide whether they can operate if they're comfortable to operate, depending on where the meningioma is sitting, depending on where the tumour sits. And most of the surgeons will offer a craniotomy, so they'll go through the skull. Um, but I did all my research on this, and I I found that all the research that I did pointed towards that the best route to get to mine was through the nose.
Yeah, again, anything to do with the pituitary, quite often they do go through the nose now, don't they? It's quicker and easier.
Yeah. So what I did was with my private health, I then started to research top surgeons who were experts in endonasal surgery and removing skull-based tumours. And I found a fantastic surgeon in Cheadle. And I told my private health that I wanted to see him and only him. And he agreed to do the surgery through the nose. And the surgery took place in April in Cheadle. And I had two surgeons. I had an ENT surgeon. She was absolutely fantastic. She had to, basically, I've had a nose job. So she had to do, what did she call it? A septoplasty to be able to get through. And then the brain surgeon took over to remove the tumour, as much of it as he could. And then she closed everything up. So yes, it's not long since it's happened. So I think we're coming up to tomorrow. I'll be 8 weeks post-op.
Right. Yeah. Gosh. So, and what's the impact been on your life?
So I suppose when I found out about the tumour, it was more the emotional impact that I felt like I'd only just got my life back from having all the heart stuff go on. And I'd worked really hard on my health and fitness. And I'd worked really, really hard to bring my confidence back and to look after my business as well. So I suppose all of that was the emotional side of it. And then I went into a mode where I knew that the operation would be coming, and I just carried on with my health and fitness, and I worked on the business. And I was thinking about future proofing my business and making sure that I was delegating everything to my team and basically doing what I do with my clients, which is going in with a bird's eye view and saying, right, what can be delegated? What can be automated? How can we make this easier for me to be out of the business for up to 3 months if I need it? So I just focused.
It must have been quite hard in some ways, though, to almost step back like that and just to be your own client in a way, but necessary. And how lucky, well, not lucky, but how good that you've got that experience and you could say, right, okay, this is how it's going to happen, this is what's going to happen, and almost kind of bring a little bit of objectivity in to what you were doing so that you can focus on recovery. So
Yes.
regarding activity then, how quickly did you get back to activity?
So I'm only just starting to get back to activity now. So for the first 6 weeks, I wasn't really allowed to do anything, and I wasn't able to walk around on my own for the first 5 weeks or so. Anyway, I wasn't allowed to bend over. I wasn't allowed to lift anything. Um, I wasn't allowed to do any household chores, which has been fantastic for my nails because they look amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say all of this. The problem is, on the one hand, it's kind of complete rest, which is a good thing. But on the other hand, when you're used to being active, you're used to being busy, you're used to running a business, there's that dichotomy of I need to rest, but there's also the side of you that needs to be busy
Yes, I found
and
it
active.
so difficult to sit on the sofa, um, because that's just not me. I'm not somebody who just sits there. I'm somebody that's really busy. My son plays a lot of football. He plays for an academy. He plays for the county. If I'm not working, I'm taking Thomas somewhere to football. And then the rest of the time, because I enjoy my work and I find it fun, like we said at the beginning, it doesn't have to be hard. It can be fun. I'm usually coming up with like a new idea for something or helping somebody start a business or scale a business. So for me, when all of that had happened and I was in recovery, I found that really hard. And I did have a couple of blip days where I was really down.
I can imagine, and of course, the one thing that often helps is to go for a walk or do some activity, which you can't do. And
Exactly.
it
Yeah.
must be very frustrating. And I know people who, quite a lot of people say when they're used to activities being their release, their stress management, their safe place almost, their go-to happy place. When you suddenly can't, it's really hard because it's that double hit of I can't be active, but that the knock-on effect is I can't manage my stress in the same
Yeah.
way. Um, so
But I also couldn't think straight for most of those weeks. My brain didn't seem to be working at full capacity because obviously it was healing and there was probably a lot of swelling. And most of that time, right up until the 6 week point, I had headaches every day.
wow. And that's debilitating as well, isn't it? Very
Yeah.
debilitating. So what sort of activity are you starting to get back to?
So last week, I started walking. So before my operation, I used to walk around the village that I live in pretty much every day. Last week, I managed to walk um, up the hill to the village, and I worked in the cafe, my favourite little cafe up there in Harden, and walked back. And I did that 3 times last week,
Wow.
which
And that must have felt like freedom. Yes.
yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
and freedom is the word because, I felt so trapped. I felt like I've lost my freedom. I've had to surrender my driving license for 6 months, which is
Right.
big.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a big thing.
A lot of these things are things that we just take for granted, that we can jump in the
Yeah,
car or we can go for a walk or we can do things, and all of a sudden when you
yeah,
can't, and either you can't physically, but also you can't because of advice, and legalities in the case of a driving license. It's what else is there? It's kind of like it's so hard to think, well, what do I replace this with? If you're used to going to the gym and you suddenly, like with we just had the pandemic, you can't go to the gym, you find things you can do at home, you do different things. But to suddenly go from being active, and particularly for you when you sort of really built this into your lifestyle, to suddenly be right, no, stop. It that must have been quite hard
yeah,
to it's so frustrating to come to terms with that kind of, I can't do it, I'm
yeah.
not allowed to. And it's just like part of you must want to rebel a bit and say, no, I'm going to go. But then the sensible part is like, no, I've got to do this the right way. I've got to be
Mm.
sensible about this.
But what I'd
So
say
what,
to anyone that is going to go through anything like this, or somebody who's going through something like this and they're in that recovery stage, is you've got to just keep thinking it's temporary and it will pass. My grandma used to have that saying. She used to say it all the time, it will pass. And it's so true. And that's what I had to keep reminding myself, that it was temporary.
and that's a really important point, isn't it? Is this isn't forever. There will be something that you can do, just not right now. What advice were you given about activity?
So the advice that I was given was don't do anything till the 6 week point, but then start with the slow walking and listen to my body. I've got another appointment this week. Yeah, tomorrow. I've got another appointment with my neurosurgeon where I'll get some more advice. But I think, now that I'm feeling a lot better, I probably need a plan, don't I? In what is the plan? Within the advice of the surgeon, and how am I going to get back to my fitness, and what do I need to be careful of?
And this is the thing, isn't it? It's for somebody like you who's really worked on your fitness and your lifestyle. It is important to have that plan of getting back into it. It's not just right. I've got to get fit. I don't know what to do. It's kind of okay. I know what I was doing. I need a plan to get back to what I was doing and things like that. And this is where I'm not sure with your health board, but I know there are most of the health boards, particularly up where you are, kind of North Wales way. Um, do have a lot of neurological physios who will work with you to specifically work on things like balance, on movement and range of movement and things like that. And this is where you're making sure that you ask about this. And I think a lot of the times people aren't aware what's available, so they don't ask about it. For a lot of people, it would never occur to them to ask about a neurological physio. And yet there are many out there who are perfectly placed to sort of support you in the specifics of getting back, but also be able to answer questions about any impact or any side effects or consequences more that you experience as well. And I think that's always worth doing is making sure that you find out exactly what advice is available, and support and seek that, because like you say, you want a plan to get back, but it has to be realistic. It has to be flexible, because it's not like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, this is what I'll do. Tuesdays, Thursdays, this is what I do. It has to be, okay, if I'm having a good day or a good week, this is what I'm going to do. If I'm having a bad day, I give myself permission to rest. And it's realizing as well that the recovery isn't going to be linear. It's not like here's where I am and I'm going to gradually get back to where I was. It will be up, down, all over the place.
Yes. And that's so important for people to realise, because I know how frustrated I got over those 6 or 7 weeks when I couldn't see it being linear. It wasn't going up and up every day. It was a roller coaster of, I was getting better, but I couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And my light actually came at 6 weeks when I went to the hairdressers, and I kind of had a normal time at the hairdressers.
But and I think this is so important, and this is something that people, like you say, people do need to be aware that your recovery will not be linear. There will be good days, bad days, good weeks, bad weeks, and it's accepting that that is part and parcel of it. You're here now. It's a bit like driving from London to Manchester. You can, for some people, they go straight up the motorway, job done, here I am. Others, the motorway might be closed and they have to go a scenic route, which is all over the place and it takes longer, and you've got a few dead ends and you have to back up, and sat nav takes you down the wrong road. So it's really important for people to understand after any surgery, particularly if it's been in the brain, that your recovery will be erratic,
Mm,
and you have to expect it to be. You've got to be flexible, haven't you, in your approach? You've got to be flexible
yes.
in your mindset of what you're going to do.
Yeah. I just feel very grateful at the moment that I feel
Yeah.
well. So this week, I've had my desk back in the office and I've done quite a lot of work this week, which I've really enjoyed. Um, I know that I've got a long way to go in my recovery. Obviously, I'll find out a little bit more tomorrow when I see the neurosurgeon. I know he took most of the tumour, but he couldn't take all of it because part of it is within the optic nerve. Um, so I'm presuming that what he will be doing is monitoring me with scans to make sure it's not growing. And then if it does grow, there'll be a potential that I'll have to have radiotherapy. But, if that happens, I'll deal with it when I come to it. and I'm having to see an endocrinologist as well because of the tumour being so near to the pituitary gland. If you look at a pituitary gland funny, it gets very upset. So I've already had some difficulties with my pituitary. I'm still on steroids at the moment, but they've started to reduce my steroid dose. Um, so that's helping my cortisol levels at the moment. But they're concerned from some of the tests that I might be growth hormone deficient. So the endocrinologist said that in about 3 months she'll deal with that and she'll do 2 more tests. And if that's the case, I'll have to take, I think it's anabolic steroids that they give you for that, I think.
Yeah, it is. And this is the thing, you know, growth hormones are very, very important. For growth, obviously, but also in things like muscle repair and
Yes.
building, which means that
Yes.
again,
And
this is
bones. Yeah.
where recovery will take longer because potentially your muscles won't adapt the same way that somebody who has normal growth hormone levels. So again, this is where, you know, it sounds like you're getting so much support, but it's, you know, the important thing is to do something, you know, even if it is, like you say, just a short walk or some stretching, or if you can, I don't know what the risk of infections like, but if you can swim where you're fully supported, the important thing is to find something that you feel, okay, this is comfortable, this is something I can manage, this is something that at least makes me feel like I'm doing something for myself. And that psychological um benefit is really important. It's like I'm not just stuck sat on the sofa. I can, even if it is minor, there are things that I can do, and I think that's a big part of recovery, isn't it? Because you see yourself just doing a little bit more and a tiny bit more, most days, not every day necessarily. But this is where I think having that support though is really important, and the ongoing, you know, checks just to make sure your hormones are right, that everything's working the way it should be is absolutely vital, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
And I think once I've got all the answers to those things and I've got all the details back from all the specialists and whatever over the next few months, then, my plan can be tweaked, can't it, in terms of the
yeah,
activity that I'm going to be doing?
yeah, and you'll probably also have a better idea of your energy levels as well. To sort of say, right, I know that on certain days and times my energy isn't up to doing much, but I know on other days it is. So it's kind of having that, and prioritizing your physical and emotional health as well as your business, because again, it's very easy to sort of push back into business, right? I've got to get back into business, got to help get that going, whereas actually it's having that balance, isn't it, and making sure that you're looking at every area of your life and saying, right, they're all priorities. um Household chores maybe not, but physical and emotional health, family health, life, business, they're all priorities. It's just you might prioritize different ones on different days. So I think,
Yes. And then anything that I'm doing in my business at the moment is all centered around the future
yeah,
proofing things and putting together things that don't require me to be in the business all the
and
time.
it's, I mean, is that advice that you would give yourself as a new, or you would give any new business owner, um, about, you know, don't just think about day to day what's happening now. Think about what if. None of us like to think about worst case scenarios, do we? But actually, if you are a business owner, you know, you do need to have some sort of contingency plan in place that, right, okay, if I can't work, then I've got somebody that can. I've got a plan. Is that advice you'd give?
Well, there's a couple of things really on this subject that I'd say. And one is um, be very clear on your why. What's your why for running your own business and being self employed? And don't forget that and lose sight of it, because I think that's easy to do. And then the lifestyle, because you talk about balance, and that's what I'd say to anybody, because it's very easy, and I see a lot of people start a business, set up as self-employed, and they forget their why, and they forget all about the lifestyle and the balance that they need and why they're doing it, and then they suddenly find themselves really busy. But the other thing as well that I look at in business when I work with my clients is make sure it's not all about you. And that, that's not an ego thing. That's to do with, if you have to take some time out of the business, is there an income stream or multiple income streams that will still make you some money? And this is just a general thing. And then you've got your what ifs as well. What if something does happen that means that you do have to be out of your business, whether it's to do with, a relative that you need to look after, or, your child, or your own health? What if that happens? So think about that when you're building your business models. I say this to all of my clients, and it's really, really important. The other thing that I regret not doing as well is taking out critical illness. I wish I'd taken out critical illness cover.
And it's not hugely expensive either, is it? But it will certainly, it's an added cushion, it's an added layer of support if you do have a critical illness and things like that. Yeah, it's really good. So thinking back then to some of you, is I mean, it must be so frustrating having got yourself fit and healthy to suddenly be sort of knocked backwards. But do you feel that the fact that you had got to a good level of fitness and health has kind of really helped with your recovery?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. When I first had my appointment with the surgeon, and we were talking about the surgery, um, I had the option to either have surgery straight away, or I could wait, and they could have, kept on scanning me to see what the growth of the tumour was like. But his advice was, "You're young," which I said to him, "Can you say that again? Can I record that? Because I'm 47." So he said, "You're young and you're fit at this moment in time, and your recovery will be better." And he was absolutely right. If I hadn't done all of that work leading up to the surgery, I wouldn't have got through it like I have. And it was really hard. But, if I'd have been less fit, it would have been really, really tough.
And I think that's a really important message is, we know now that a lot of people before they have surgery are offered prehabilitation or prehab to get themselves fitter, because any operation is a major trauma, a physical, emotional, everything. But it's, don't think, oh, well, if something happens, then I'll work on my fitness. Do it now, because if anything does happen, you'll be steps ahead of where you could be. And I think, recovery will be quicker, it will be more efficient, potentially better, which, it's a good thing. It's got to be a good thing. And I think that's a really strong message is, don't wait until something happens to prioritize your health and fitness.
Mhm.
Prioritize it
And
now.
also from a mindset point of view, because a positive mindset will help get you through. And then I happen to have a couple of clients who are hypnotherapists. One is a hypnotherapy trainer, and the other lady does hypnotherapy for surgery. So I had hypnotherapy with her prior to my surgery. She recorded those sessions for me to listen to, and she recorded another session for me to listen to during my recovery.
Uh, and again, but it's finding what works for you, isn't it? It's finding all the different ways. For some people, hypnotherapy was wonderful. Other people, there are other things, but it's, don't wait until something happens. Build these tools into your kind of your life kit, if you like, your toolkit
Yes,
now, because do you know what? If touch wood, everything else, nothing ever happens to you. You're fit and healthy. Great.
yes,
But if something does happen, you're in a much stronger position for getting better and everything. So
definitely.
so anything on the horizon, sort of business or health wise, that you feel you're looking forward to? 'Cause I think we need to sort of think about looking forward as well as
Yeah, I suppose, personally and health wise, I feel like I'm moving forwards. We've got a holiday booked in October, which my in laws have booked for us at Centre Parks in the Lake District. So all being well, I'll be able to do some activities. And if I'm not feeling like the activities, there's plenty of space to wander around, or ride a bike.
that's
You
it.
know,
And it's again, it gives you something to work towards, doesn't it? So right, we're going there in
hmm
6 months or 4 months, whatever. Um, it gives me something to work towards, that, even if I can just walk around the forest and have a look and watch people, or
Mhm.
at best take part. And I think
Yes.
that's a really important thing, is to have something, like we talked very early, about starting with your goals and working up to them, kind of
Mhm.
reverse engineering almost. But I think that's really important, to have things to look forward to have things to work towards, because it just
Mhm.
keeps you motivated, doesn't it?
Yes. And then business wise, I'm in the middle of doing another coaching qualification, which I'm really enjoying. So I've got a bit more work to do on that one. I'm also in the middle of launching some things. So I've collaborated with a friend and colleague of mine, Dawny Beth Baxter, and we're launching her certified social media management course. The only one of its kind in the UK, which is certified and CIPD as well. So we're just in the middle of doing a launch for that, which is it's fantastic. I love doing a launch and I love collaborating as well. So that's very exciting. I'm relaunching my virtual assistant course, and I've just made some upgrades to my membership as well. So there's lots of really good stuff in the pipeline.
Which sounds amazing, and considering everything that you've gone through in the last few months, it's like I say, it's really positive, isn't it, to think, right, okay, I'm getting my health back together, I'm boosting my business, I'm collaborating with people, and it's just a wonderful thing. Kellie, thank you so much for coming to talk to me. It's been really, really interesting, and I think, for me, one of the standout things is it's future proof your business, but also
Mm-hmm.
future proof your health.
Yes.
It's really there. Thank you so much. I'll make
Yeah.
sure all the links are in the podcast if you do want to get in touch with Kellie. And we wish you a full, successful, and wonderfully active recovery.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Belito, and my guests. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.